They want to wine and dine. They don't want to get dirty. They want to wear a nice suit. They want to go to a nice 5-star restaurant, and they don't want their jersey dirty at the end of the season or at the end of the game. Ciao ragazzi. Welcome back to Calcio Culture. Want to address the elephant in the room quickly. New music. Currently dealing with a little bit of copywriting issues. Working through that now, but we might have to say RIP, quick moment of silence for the old music as our videos have been getting taken down from Spotify due to it. So currently trying to work through new music. Might use the what you just heard, might use a different one. We'll see there. But with that said, welcome back. We are here with all three hosts. I'm Motts. We are here. Logs is here after his 2-week hiatus. Logs, how you doing?
Good to be back, Paisans. The boys held it down for me. Sorry about it. On a little bit of vocal rest, but ready to get back into for match week 8.
Love to hear that from...
Not believing there was any vocal rest. He's loud on here and he's loud in real life. Like it is not vocal rest ever.
I can tell you that he has not been resting in the group chat at any moment that he gets to shit on Juventus. He will do that, especially during the Champions League games, which annoys me because his team's not even in the Champions League. So it really grinds my gears. But yeah, great to have Logs back. Vos, how are you doing today?
I'm good. This weekend showed me that I know nothing about Italian soccer. So it was exciting.
None of us do. We're faking it until we make it, right? We're just, that's what you fake it until you make it in life, baby. Let's go ahead and get into this week's episode of Calcio Culture. We are covering match week 8 today, which in my opinion, we have seen more of the same from every team. Napoli show their championship DNA with a convincing, also controversial 3-1 win versus Inter, who once again show that they lack mentality needed to win big games. Roma get the same exact 1-0 win that they have gotten all season to allow them to jump back into tied for top of the table. Fiorentina go 8 straight games without a win with another draw versus Bologna. Lazio send Tudor packing after a unconvincing 1-0 win versus Juventus. Milan salvage a point with a 93rd minute banger to tie Pisa 2-2. Udinese get the win over Lecce in a 5-goal thriller, and Verona, Cagliari, Parma, Como, Atalanta, and Cremonese all draw. What a match weekend 8 we had, boys.
We needed it after match week 7. Like we said, match week 7 was, dog shit, putting it lightly. Not a lot of goals, very boring games. This was the polar opposite. There was a lot of comebacks, a lot of craziness, and then just a ton of news coming into this. We had a very long planning session right before we hopped on here, which goes to show a lot of new storylines coming out of this weekend.
Yeah, tough to come back, or clearly from the boys, it was tough to come back, get into the swing of things after that long international break. But match week 8 was the classic calcio that we all love and know.
Definitely. And before we get into everything here, we got a quick shout out, Paisans of the Week. Not really a Paisan of the Week, just a big shout out. Call to action. This is usually a Motts one, so I'll give it to you, Motts here.
Yeah, just comment, like, subscribe. I will say our TikTok has been ripping. A lot of people commenting, a lot of likes. Spotify and YouTube. We are getting comments, more and more comments, more and more likes every episode, but we want to shout out a Paisan of the Week each week. We felt like this week we didn't necessarily have a clear-cut Paisan of the Week. So rather than doing that, we want to encourage people to continue to comment, like, subscribe, reach out, let us know what you want to hear. Give us 5 stars. It really helps the channel grow. We really appreciate it. We love hearing your guys' feedback, and we want to get you guys involved and do things that you guys are requesting. So please comment, like, subscribe, reach out, do it all. Be the Paisan of the Week.
Well, I actually do have a Paisan of the Week, at least personally, as my hiatus the last 2 weeks has not allowed me to give the proper credit where credit is due. Our Paisan Y Vane DJ continues to follow the pod, continues to comment, continues to grow Calcio Culture. And Y Vane DJ, I just have to say thank you. I have to say grazie, because you keep Vos in check when I'm not around. You keep this man grounded. Don't let the Balotelli jersey framed in the background make you think any different. This man is a Milan hater through and through. And you, my friend, keep keep the faith. So thank you for that. Paisan of the week. Last 2 weeks for me. Why Vane DJ, you the boy.
Good shout out. All right, let's get into it. Match week 8. Only one place to start. I think it's pretty obvious. It had to be in Naples. Inter at Napoli. 3-1 win for Napoli. Goals from Kevin De Bruyne on a PK, Scott McTominay, Hakan Çalhanoğlu on a PK, and then Frank Zambo Anguissa. Couple notable things in this one. KDB does get hurt on the penalty that he took. He appears to be out for several months. Another one that happened, Henrik Mkhitaryan got hurt for Inter Milan. And the one thing we want to take 1 second to talk about here, big kind of moment in the match. After the Inter Milan penalty kick that brought it to 2-1, little scuffle with Antonio Conte and the Inter Milan players. Really interesting because he pretty much knows all these players. He's the guy that kind of built up this team. And he was like chirping at Dumfries, and then Lautaro Martinez gets into it with him, and kind of all hell breaks loose for a minute. I thought this played into Conte's hands. I think this was purposely done by Conte to be like, okay, Inter scored a goal. Let's kind of throw them off of what they're doing. Seeing Lautaro react the way he did, that's not really like who Lautaro is. He's more of a quiet, go do his thing kind of guy. So, I mean, I saw it as this is advantage Napoli. Like, if it gets too intense, this is what Napoli does in practice every day, basically, because Conte is so intense. So not surprising for me. Out of that scuffle, Napoli kind of just dominate the rest of the game.
Yeah, I will say, I think definitely Conte knowing those players over there in the Inter sideline and on the pitch helped him. And even when Conte was the manager at Inter, he got into a very heated exchange with Lautaro Martinez based off a substitution. And then I remember Inter posting about him and Conte basically wearing boxing gloves and going to fight it out. So they were able to like kind of play it off as a joke. However, I'm sure Lautaro has feelings towards Conte that aren't the best, just based off of the gestures that he made towards Conte. I know you're on different sidelines and it gets heated, but they had their problems when they were together. And so Conte definitely knows how to get under his skin, or maybe what buttons to press in order to get him out of his head, for him to be on his A game, because he managed him. He did frustrate him as a manager. I don't know if it was intentional, but it definitely worked. It definitely helped. And this was a big win for Napoli.
Classic Inter, though. Classic Inter. Ungrateful. They'd forget the man that brought them to be. Lautaro should be thanking this man, kissing the ground that this man walks on. He made his career. He got him his whole start. There should be no reason that Lautaro is acting like he's on the Argentina national team. That's something I would see Paredes do. All right, that's something I would see Messi do. Lautaro needs to close his mouth, thank the man, and move on and keep his head in the game, because that's ultimately what matters right now. Inter could not get it done with that mentality.
I think that, not to get too sidetracked, but Conte, obviously, Lautaro had his shot under Conte, but I think during that time of Conte at Inter, it was Lukaku's team. He was the point man. He was the striker. He was Conte's man. And Lautaro was getting subbed off. And it wasn't until Inzaghi got there where Lautaro kind of became the man, the number 9, the captain. So I understand your point, but I think that it was more Conte didn't necessarily see Lautaro as like, this is my best player, my leader, this and that. And maybe Lautaro wanted to take that next step.
A lot of animosity regardless, but we're going to start this one from a Napoli standpoint, because for me, you guys may disagree with me. People listening may disagree with me. I thought Napoli played them off the park in this one. I think the scoreline really goes to show that. I thought the one goal was a Buongiorno handball that simply was idiotic defending. I don't know why he had his hands up like that. But it's just confusing how Napoli can go from 6-2 loss at PSV to beating Inter Milan at home and having maybe the best performance they've had under Antonio Conte as a whole. In this one, they went back to that 4-1-4-1. The notable thing in this formation was he went with David Neres as the striker rather than, I think Lorenzo Luca was actually not even available. I could be incorrect about that. He wasn't. No, I think he was available. But just off of a couple bad performances, he decided to rotate and try David Neres out there. I was really unsure about this one to begin with. Obviously not a striker profile, very much a winger. Has probably never played this position in his life. I thought it worked very well. He was kind of running into the channels, really dragging Acerbi into areas he didn't want to go. And the second goal directly comes off of David Neres making a run, dragging the center backs out of the middle of the field, and Scott McTominay powering through the middle to run on and do what he did last year. Become like that shadow striker, get in behind and score a goal. The other notable thing here is when Kevin De Bruyne did get hurt, it was in the first half pretty early on. Mateus Oliveira comes on in his place, and they go back to the 3-5-2. And after that point, that's when they really dominated. I thought that's what we saw a lot of last year, kind of that 4-man diamond midfield they got away from, and it worked really well. So I think there's a lot of different ways to look at this. Like the 4-1-4-1 was working, and then you have a 3-5-2 working. It's just a lot for Antonio Conte. He wins in different ways, and I still don't know how they were able to go and do this after what has happened over the last 2 weeks. And I don't know what it is, but what big takeaways did you have, Mats, from this one?
I think that the big takeaway here for me was that Conte knows how to I think this was the perfect game for Napoli based off of their results in the last 2 games, right? They got embarrassed in the Champions League game 6-2, and then they lost to Torino 1-0. And so now everyone is questioning, like, is this Napoli team legit? You got Conte coming out saying, I got too many guys. I got to figure out how to manage them. We bought too many players. And people might be hitting the panic button, right? They're overreacting. Then you have Inter, in my opinion, the second favorites to win the Scudetto. If you lose that game, then we're really hitting the panic button. Is Conte what is he gonna do? What are the players gonna do? But they got this game, and they knew they had to be on their A game. They had to be locked in for 90 minutes, and that is what he specializes in, is getting his players to be locked in for 90 minutes, big games, and that's exactly what they were. So I think it was a great time for Inter to come up in their schedule, and this shows, to me, the biggest takeaway is it shows a championship team mentality in Napoli versus a non-championship mentality in Inter, which kind of goes back to the theme that I mentioned, more of the same. We knew that this is Napoli's mindset. We knew what they can do when they're playing big teams, because they won that Scudetto last season, and we know how Inter struggle against big teams in that mentality. And that was my big takeaway.
I think from me, the big takeaway was Inter. So I'll cover it in a second. But for Napoli to get back on track here, especially after an absolutely debilitating loss to PSV in the Champions League, this is exactly what Matt said. This is the game that they need to get back on track. This is a game that you can build off of. This is a game that Conte is going to take back to the practices. Well, there would have been practices this week. We got some midweek footy, but Conte is going to be able to get these guys in the right mindset. I do not think the injuries here are going to make that big of a difference because they are so deep. They do have a lot of the guys, like Conte was just saying. It's just a matter of how long are these injuries going to take. But I do have a one bright spot that we'll touch on in a second from one injury in particular. Vos, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we can get right into that, because kind of the big thing that I want to talk about, and what you had here, Lugs, is the same thing. KDB going down, they get 2 more goals when he's off the field. He took a PK, but he wasn't directly involved in like the first goal, although taking the penalty was him taking it. But what you had written down here was, are they better off without KDB on the field? And I think that is a legitimate shout, and I think this game went to show that the 2 most important players on this team are probably Scott McTominay and Zambo, right? Going back to last year, those were probably the 2 most important players on the team. And then in this game, they both did exactly what they did last year. Scott McTominay making like a number 9 run, and then Zambo picking the ball up at midfield and just driving through a bunch of guys to get it there. And to start the season, we've been talking about like the diamond midfield. Scott McTominay hasn't been great. But has it really been Scott McTominay isn't doing well, or is it he's just in the wrong place on the field? And this may have shown that McTominay does need to be used differently. And to get the best out of Napoli, you do need to use him differently. And Mats, you said last week, same thing in the Champions League game. Where did the goals come from? Scott McTominay. And it's just, everything is screaming, let's mold the team to get the most out of those 2 guys. And I think to the point about the injuries, Lukaku hurt, KDB now hurt, Højlund hurt, Rachmani hurt, Lobotka hurt. It even says even more so, let's steer into what we know works and what won us the Scudetto last year. And what I was just talking about, over the last 2 weeks, the team hasn't been great, and then suddenly you pop off a performance like this. And for me, I think that those 2 guys are the reason why that you can go from being that bad to that good out of nowhere.
You bring in Kevin De Bruyne, who's an absolute world-class player. No one is denying it. But the problem with him is you get a lot of key man risk, right? Because your entire strategy, your entire tactic is built around him and what he can do from a fluency perspective across the field. What worked last year in their Scudetto run is the fact that you never really knew how they were coming at you. You had Zambo streaking up the field. You had Scott McTominay streaking up the field. You had sometimes Lukaku making it on his own. With KDB, the entire offense tends to run through him, rightfully so. But when you take KDB off the field here, it allows you to not get so centric around one player, and it opens up the whole field for them. And so I do think that I'm not going to say that they're a better team without KDB, but I think that their fluidity and how comfortable they feel on the pitch definitely goes up, right? And it's a perfect example with Scott. I think that he finds a lot more confidence in himself when KDB's not on the pitch because he does feel the pressure to be that guy to create more scoring opportunities for himself. And so you see him getting up the pitch with a lot more vigor, a lot more confidence, a lot more conviction. And so these next 3 months will be telling to see if that comes to fruition. But from the short stint that we had in the last, 70 minutes of this game, I think it does go to show that without KDB on the pitch, Zombo and Scott McTominay feel a lot more freedom to make more of themselves than to be compliments to Kevin De Bruyne. And I think that will play into their favor.
Yeah, I mean, when KDB got injured, I almost, and I wish I did, I almost texted you guys in the chat being like, this is a blessing in disguise because it's going to allow Scott to play in his position that he played last year, that he scored 10 goals and was the Serie A MVP, right? One other thing I do want to mention really quick is Zombo was 1 foot out the door in the summer, and they kept him, and he has been pivotal to this team, and he was pivotal again, and that was a fantastic run and goal that Zombo scored.
Classic Zombo goal.
Classic. And so they were their Napoli's heart last season, and now once again they can be. And I will just say, I've been saying maybe you do bench De Bruyne and let Scott play in that role that he likes to play, because the problem that you have with De Bruyne is, just like Logue said, the game kind of needs to run through him. But he's 34 years old and he lacks legs, right? He tore his hamstring. Scott and Zombo have been the one that have running back and forth for him, tracking defensively, not allowing them to be as far up the pitch offensively when needed, which is why they've kind of struggled in front of goal with scoring goals. And so with De Bruyne out, Scott's going to obviously take his old role, which I think will benefit Napoli as a whole. With that said, I do think that there has been some mismanagement from Conte this season, and I think Exhibit A is Kevin De Bruyne. Right? 34-year-old man. Pep wasn't playing him 90 minutes game in and game out. Granted, Manchester City probably have a little bit more quality on the bench, although Napoli did spend 120 million and do have quality on the bench. But Antonio Conte needs to realize this is a 34-year-old guy. He's not in the prime of his career. He should have been rested more than what Conte was resting him. And then you look at the other list that Bose, the other players that are injured that Bose rattled off earlier, with Højlund, Rachmani, Lubaka, Lukaku. That's a lot of injuries, and that is kind of making me ask questions around how Conte's managing this season. We know that his practices are insane on fitness and running and killing guys. You have 2 games a week now, going to be 3 with the Coppa Italia. Is this Conte mismanaging his guys, not giving them enough rest? And because of these injuries, are they going to be able to keep this pace in the Scudetto and qualify for the Champions League knockout stages? Because I think it's a disaster if they don't, with the money they spent and the teams that they had.
I usually don't say this, but I think they've got to bag the Champions League. Like it started bad. There are so many injuries. We're 1 key guy away now. Like, there are already key guys out. If 1 more key guy gets hurt, they're going to be in trouble in Serie A. Like, right now, they are just outside of that. But with the injuries they have, I don't think they have the quality to compete in both competitions. And number 2, I think what this season has gone to show is, like, Antonio Conte just doesn't have it. That's it. Like, when it comes to Champions League, he's not going to get it done. Don't try to get it done when you can. And for Napoli and for De Laurentiis, it's kind of a weird one to be okay with. But take your wins, right? Like, you are in a great position to go win Scudetto 2 years in a row. Be okay with not being competitive in the Champions League. Like, ride out this Conte thing. It's not going to last forever. Conte never lasts forever. But why not be the best as you can in the league and just be okay with the guy that you have, who is that domestic manager who's going to beat Inter Milan's, beat not AC Milan this year, but win these big games, be prepared to get points, and have a real chance fighting for the Scudetto, or you're going to continue to have these injuries, which does happen with Conte a lot of the time. That's my 2 cents. it's really hard. It's a tough pill to swallow, but I think it's the right thing to do.
I never thought I'd see the day. I never thought I'd see the day when Vos finally agrees with me that maybe you don't go after every competition. And I totally agree with you, though. Watching Napoli in the Champions League this year, they don't have it. They just don't have it. And that's okay. I'm okay with it. I don't know about Napoli fans. They're probably incredibly excited that they're back in some real European competitions. But to win the Scudetto 2 years in a row here in what has been such a competitive Serie A over the last 5-6 years, that's no small feat. And I do think that you have to be okay with that. Conte is the man to do it in the domestic league. You guys are top of the table right now. You kind of have your destinies already in your own hands from this standpoint, aside from the fact that Roma's tied. I have my opinions on that. But to keep intact the momentum that you have from last year into this season is so incredibly important for the long haul. Like you just said, Vos, Conte's not for forever, but Napoli is trying to be for forever. And to win 2 Scudettos in a row, to attract more and more talent to this team will only benefit them in the long run. So they really need to narrow their sights, especially given the fitness that they don't have. It would be a disaster if they go trophyless.
Yeah, I agree. I think that that's frustrating because to me, I was judging them on 2 competitions because of the money they spent winning the Scudetto with basically all the same players and then just adding. But the nightmare start and the injuries, you have to ask questions about Antonio Conte and the way he's going about it. But we'll have to see what happens in the next few games with the Champions League to see if they can salvage it, because it is easier to make the Champions League with this new format. So 2 wins could get them in. So I don't necessarily want to see them totally punt it, but we will definitely see. Last thing I want to just really quick mention.
Just really sorry, Mats, but I just want to last wrap up on the Champions League part of this. When I say bag it, what I mean is prioritize the league games. Like, don't, if there's a chance to go like win a game, I wouldn't say like rotate the entire squad. Like, you still have a chance of getting it. And so that's what I mean by bagging it. Like, prioritize the league games, because looking at who they have, Frankfurt is a hard game. They have that next. Then they have Karabag, Benfica. Oh, I just lost it. Karabag, Benfica, Copenhagen, and then Chelsea. So like probably 3 of those 4 games are very winnable on your bad day kind of thing. So that's where he has gotten the balance wrong historically. And I think there's a way where you can still prioritize the league and be competitive in these games, but he's shown he has not been able to do it. So that's just what I wrap up there.
Yeah, we'll have to see what Antonio Conte ends up doing. But last point I wanted to make on Napoli, we've talked about it now 2 weeks in a row. Just want to say it for a third because I feel like we have to hold this man accountable. Buongiorno, once again, bad game, terrible defending, gave up the PK, wasn't a 4-man defense, kind of wasn't a 3-man defense when Conte made the switch and KDB went injured. But is he lacking fitness? Are we willing to go as far as saying this is a flop buy at this point? Because last season he was in and out of the lineup. He played when he was in last season, he was playing well. This season, when he's in, he's not playing well. Should he be in? Is he needed to be in because of the injuries? What is happening here?
I think number one, they have to play him because of the injuries, because you don't really have another center back right now. Because like to play Mateus Oliveira, you have to play a 3. And then if you're playing a 3, you still need to play him. So no matter what, he's in your top 3 center back pairing, is probably your second best center back still, which is insane because right now Juan Jesus is probably their best center back, which is saying a lot because they have Sam Bukema and Buongiorno. And then going back to last year, I was thinking about it because in this exact game last year, the one at the San Siro actually, Buongiorno had a block and a tackle that basically won them the Scudetto when you go back. And every game he played last year, like you said, Mats, he was good. This might be a little bit of a sophomore slump kind of thing. And I think the other thing working against him, I would imagine, because this is what I would be thinking if I was him, they won the Scudetto without me last year, is a large part, I think, of probably how he's looking at this and is thinking, like, I need to take a big step forward, and there's a lot of pressure on him now. So I think that's also working against him. But I don't know.
I mean,
at some point here, there's questions if he should continue to be when everybody's healthy. I wouldn't play him right now, personally.
I just don't think we can discount the fact that Rachmani's not playing next to him. He's had Rachmani for maybe 1 game this whole season, and that was kind of the winning combo last year. Obviously, Rachmani in our team this season arguably should have been in everyone's team this season last year, but having that partnership not there this year, I think is definitely is a huge burden on Buongiorno and the consistency that he's probably used to. But I agree.
He's got to be the guy that's consistent.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Because he's better.
Yeah.
So Juan Jesus
Allegedly
should be the one struggling. Yeah. like he should have taken that next step.
It's just I guess it is number one, it's a storyline. Number two, it's like at what point are we like this is a flop? And I think it's a good point, Mats. But I think we're a long way off from saying Buongiorno is a flop for Napoli personally.
If Tomori's wasn't a flop last season, then Buongiorno was definitely not a flop yet. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, but Tomori had one very good season, I will say, which kind of drags him through. Anything else on Napoli, guys, or we can kick it over to Inter Milan?
No, I think there's much bigger questions to be asked of this Inter squad.
All right, well, we'll go over to Inter Milan. Quickly bringing you through the lineup, classic Inter 3-5-2. No real changes. I would say the one thing is that Cherby still the center back, and then Boni is the guy playing for Thuram. Notably, what did happen, Mkhitaryan got hurt in the first half, and kind of surprising, he went to Zielinski as the replacement. I thought it didn't really work well. And when you look at them when they had a lot of the ball, that's where you lose Mkhitaryan, I think. He's a very kind of like your attacking midfielder in this new Kivu system with Barella coming deeper and Hakan being deep. So for me, I would have gone Fratesi immediately. I'm not sure what the Kivu thinking. This Zielinski experiment with Inter, I would just consider a failure at this point. So I don't know why you keep going back to that guy. Inzaghi kind of phased him out by the end. I think Kivu is probably getting there. But for me, my big takeaways in this one was just lazy defending again, and kind of like that mentality like we've been pointing to with Inter Milan time over time. Penalty kick, lazy defending from Mkhitaryan, kind of just running through Di Lorenzo, who wasn't in like the most dangerous position. Acerbi made the tackle right after. On the second goal, like I said, Bastoni and Mkhitaryan and Çalhanoğlu literally just watched Scott McTominay make a 60-yard run and didn't follow him for whatever reason. It is bizarre to watch. And then on the third one, why don't you just foul Zombo in midfield? I literally can't comprehend it. There's like 3 or 4 guys around him. Nobody puts a tackle in and just let him drive through the heart of your team. You just can't let that kind of thing happen. And better teams just don't. Like Napoli wouldn't let that happen. If somebody was driving on Napoli, one of Zombo, Scott, Labaka, or Billy Gilmore in this situation would fuck them up and not allow that to happen. That's my big takeaway. Apart from that, I don't think this is a big deal for Inter, generally speaking. Over the last couple seasons, they haven't been able to win these games. I don't really know why. I think that can be a separate question that we can get to in a second. But Lokes, you clearly had a lot to say. So let's give it to Mats first. Said you had a lot to say.
Yeah, I'll make mine quick. More of the same for me with Inter mentality. I've been screaming. I don't know why Mkhitaryan starts games anymore. I agree. Zielinski subs should have been Sucic. He's great. They're like babying Sucic. He's shown so much, and yet they don't play him that much. I don't get that. And then last thing is Bastoni on that Scott ball. He didn't even put his foot out to try to deflect it. He barely ran back. It was embarrassing. And I think questions should start to be asked around Bastoni's defending as a center back. On the ball, he's amazing. With his passing and his crossing and even going forward, he's amazing. But I think now we've started to see time and time again him make mistakes defensively where questions need to be asked, in my opinion, around his defending. But I'll send it over to Logs.
Oh, sorry to cut you off, Logs. Sorry. Before Logs goes, I just want to say one thing on Acerbi. I thought Acerbi got worked by David Neres in this game, and they probably started him trying to counter like Lorenzo Luca more would be my guess. But what is it going to take for them to just say like, we're going to run Bissick for like 3 or 4 games? Or is that never going to happen? Because for me, like Bissick has all the qualities of Acerbi in terms of being able to match up with a big, tall, strong guy like a Lukaku, like a Luka, but then is also extremely athletic and can keep up with the David Neres. I don't know. You got to move on from Acerbi at some point, right? Like he has a cap. In Bissick's ceiling is still very high. It's just when are you going to be willing to make that chance? Like, I don't know if you guys have an opinion there, but I think at some point you got to start rolling the dice. Like we have seen time and time again, center backs is not the hardest role in the world to play. Why not just try him then?
Or even De Vrij. De Vrij is still, I think, I think he's a top talent, and I think he's a much smarter player than Acerbi.
I totally disagree with that.
Acerbi's best quality is that he is 1v1, can lock somebody down as long as they're not small and quick. This was not that situation, and I think Mats and I were both on the same page about this when they let Pavard go. Just like the whole idea about bringing Akanji in was that you can let Akanji go out to pasture. We bring Akanji and you let the Pavard go, and now we're kind of still in the same spot. So the opinion hasn't changed there. Cherby should have been phased out starting game 1 this season. But I can finally talk now, and it's been a week I've been holding this in, and I wasn't here in the last episode to slap you fucking silly, but Vos, this team is not the favorite to win the Scudetto. It can't be. I don't care how much talent you have on the pitch, you have on the bench in terms of their depth, which I know that they have. This mentality, both from a player standpoint, a team standpoint on the pitch, and from a managerial standpoint, cannot be the favorite in this league. We've seen it time and time again that this team shuts off in the worst of times, this game in particular. Bastoni, of all people, should have not a single blip in his concentration on the field, being the player that he is, in the top 3 center backs in the world that we always say that he is. This team needs to gel better, even when they see a Hank go off. That shouldn't really rattle them that much. And then we talked about it with other teams, how ghosts of managerial past keep showing through, most notably on Atalanta, with Gasparini's ghost showing through with Juric. But Kivu has the same issue of not knowing how to sub that Inzaghi had last year, which was a main issue for them not winning the Scudetto last year. So with all that being said, there are still issues within this team that have not changed since last year, and I do not see where that turning point comes, because none of these guys have shown the leadership qualities able to turn this team around. And for me, this has been 7 full days of building up inside me since I listened to you speak about this. This Inter team is not the favorite. And as of right now, my call for 4th in the league is looking great, because I do not think that they're a top 3 team in this league.
I think it comes, since we've started Calcio Culture, the same every week. We come on here and it's Inter loses a big game and it's why? Like, what happened? I think at this point, the answer to that question, and it has to be the answer, right? Because I think their front office leadership under Beppe Marotta is second to none. He's built Juventus. He's built this Inter team. I think they had a great manager in Inzaghi, who we saw his mentality just sweating through his shirt. So it goes as far as back as that, is the players, and it's their best players. And it is, like Logue said, it is Bastoni, it is Barella, it is Lautaro, maybe it's Hakan. They lack the leadership, in my opinion, in order to get these guys ready every single game, or they lack the focus and concentration to play 90 minutes every single game. And at some point, it has to be pointed at the players, right? Because they have the talent. Inzaghi is a fantastic manager. Their front office is ran extremely well. They sell players for a ton of money and they get people for free, right? So I don't think it's something to do higher up, where like maybe that's like at Juventus or Milan last year. They're run like a very well-ran club. What they lack is the focus and the mentality, and I don't think it's on the managers, because Inzaghi, once again, like I said, he was screaming. He had to change shirts at halftime because he would sweat so much and scream so much. And Kivu obviously is a new young guy, but it's more of the same. And I don't think it's necessarily on Kivu, because he hasn't been there long enough for it to be on him. But you know who has? Bastoni, Barella, Hakan, Lautaro. They've been here. They've won Scudettos. They know what it takes. And the drop off between 2 seasons ago and now, for not dropping off that much players, is insane. And I think that answer is the players. And as long as the leaders in this locker room are those 4 guys, that's what Inter is going to be. And you're in a tough spot, because I don't think you can move on from any of those guys if you're Inter, because they're so good. But that's what you get with those guys as your leaders.
Yeah, I mean, and those guys got you the highest points total in a Serie A season of all time at one point.
No, they did not. Whoa, time out.
I thought they passed Juve. No, second most?
Juventus have 102 or 104 as the highest. They might have had the best goal differential, which sure, I'll give them that. But they didn't sniff Juventus's jockstrap.
But I mean, my point being with this is that it's almost like Inter isn't built to compete in like a super tight Scudetto race, right? Like, I think what kind of works against them is they have the highest quality. Like, they play the best quality football in the league. And on any given week, they can kind of coast through some of these games. Like, as good as Italian football is up and down the table, these guys are so drilled in the way they play that even on their best day, they just kind of like get across the line most of the time. And then you look at like a Napoli, which is a very stark difference. Napoli wins off of like pure energy. And like, that's what it was last year. They won off of energy. And in this game, they, again, won because of the energy they brought. They're in every tackle. They try to win every 50-50 ball, and Inter don't really have that mentality. And it is weird because going back to last year when we started Calcio Culture, every game it was this. It's still this. It's still that mentality factor. If they showed up and one person got them motivated to go like the way that Conte motivates for any one given game, if Inter had that, they would have the ruthlessness. And I guess they did when they had him, but it's not there anymore. And I think that the shout with the players is legit. There's no way to really change it, to your point, because everybody's so good and Inter is such a good team in there that they're in the Scudetto race still. It's like you can't change anything.
Yeah, I really like that point that you just said. And it made me think of a good way to paint this picture for the fellow Paisans. To win a Scudetto, you need to win dirty. Like your jersey needs to be dirty at the end of the season, and you pick up points where you shouldn't have with dirty wins, winning second balls, going in for 50-50s, like being dirty and winning battles on the pitch. Inter, they want to wine and dine. They don't want to get dirty. They want to wear a nice suit. They want to go to a nice 5-star restaurant, and they don't want their jersey dirty at the end of the season or at the end of the game. And that's how they lose sometimes. And I agree with that 100%, Bose.
They're trying to look good for their Scudetto picture, but they're never going to get it.
That's actually a good shot. I like that, Lugs. That's it for this game. Any final points on Napoli and Inter? Because these were probably the two favorites for me. And Napoli kind of just like stamped it once again. Like, we're here. We're not going anywhere. It's just crazy. This league is so crazy to me. I going into this game, I was very confident Inter were going to perform, and then they didn't. And they actually got played off the park. And Napoli, like I've been saying this whole time, worst 2 weeks under Conte possibly, into their best performance under Conte possibly. It's insane.
I will say we brushed over it. Controversial part of the game was Billy Gilmore went into a tackle, deserved a yellow card. However, the yellow card was given to Di Lorenzo, and then 6 minutes later, Billy Gilmore absolutely tackled Dumfries to stop a transition, gave him a yellow card. However, when the card was given to Di Lorenzo, everyone thought it was Billy Gilmore. So Billy Gilmore could have actually been off the park, and Napoli could have been playing with 10 men, and then maybe this conversation is totally different. So there was that in terms of controversial, but I think that the team that deserved to win won the game. Just wanted to say that really quick.
I would agree with you, but we'll keep it moving. The other huge news came out of Turin. Juve at the Stadio Olimpico lost to Lazio 1-0. Goal from Besic in this one. Coming out of this game, the bigger news the next day, actually this morning, we're recording on Monday the 27th, Igor Tudor officially sacked. And with that, I'm just going to hand it over to you, Matt, because I'm sure you have a lot to say.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, he got sacked. And also, just a little bit more salt in the wounds for Juventus. This makes 8 games in a row without a win for Juve and 4 games in a row without a goal. So one of, if not the worst run of form, or definitely the worst run of form since 2010. Juventus is currently in the worst state that they've ever been in since they were relegated for the gambling or rigging game scheme that just wasn't actually a thing, that didn't actually happen. But obviously the big news here, Tudor sacked. My opinion on that.
Hey, do we even need to talk about the game, or let's just focus on
the game?
Juve
Was a
here?
disgusting game. It was a disgusting game.
Yeah, it was nothing new, let's say, right? Like Tudor did a little bit of experimenting, but more the same. Like Juve not up to par, no mentality, no drive, no creativity, no defending, no desire, all of that. And I think that sets the stage.
Let's make one point about, for the Paisans that didn't watch this game or didn't look at the lineups for this game. Juve didn't lose to a typical Lazio. This Lazio lineup was horrendous. I texted in the group chat before this. I said, once the lineups were announced, I spent $50 to say Juventus needs to pummel this Lazio lineup, and obviously they did not even touch them this game. So the firing here is off the back of a game playing against what I would call a Serie B lineup.
Oh my God.
Make sure that's out there.
Listen, this maybe was what did you say, Vos, last year? The straw that broke the camel's back was this game. But this is not a Tudor problem. So I'm going to talk for Tudor just a very little bit. This was not his fault, okay? I like Tudor. He loves Juventus. He did what he had to do when he was managing. He drove 2 hours when he heard there was an opportunity. He signed a contract. He got us top 4 and made us We played well in the Club World Cup, albeit not against the best opponents. And then it was just these last 8 games that were really looked at, which is why he had to leave, which obviously it's unacceptable to be at Juventus with this amount of games and playing this poorly. With that said, I have no hate towards Tudor. I like him. I respect him. I will always like and respect him for he was a player and what he did in his small stint at managing, right? I thought that he tried his best in terms of trying to play the players where they wanted to be played, changing formations to see what could make work, and nothing worked. This, however, let's look back now at the last 5 seasons, and it didn't work with Allegri, it didn't work with Mata, it hasn't worked with Tudor. So it's not a manager problem at this point at Juventus. It is much deeper than that. Okay, it's a player problem, and then it is a front office problem. It's an ownership problem. So I don't want to put much blame on Tudor. He deserved to be sacked. I'll say that. I don't think he was the man to bring Juventus back to their reign or their glory days. I think he was definitely just a bridge manager. So I'm okay with moving on from him, but I don't want him to take any hate or slack from any Juventus fans because I don't think it's deserved at all.
I agree with that. I
Yeah.
definitely agree with you. And I think like one thing that I've thought about here, and I'm sure you will probably agree, and you're going to get into it more, Mats. Part of the issue with Juve is they haven't moved on from we can win it every year. And I think that something does need to change because that isn't a realistic goal anymore. And if you look back, since the Maurizio Sarri Scudetto win, 4th place, Coppa Italia winner, 4th place, Coppa Italia runner-up. Then in 2022-23, they had the bad season where they finished in 7th. Then 3rd place, Coppa Italia winners, 4th place, quarterfinalists in the Coppa Italia. So you haven't qualified for the Champions League one season since the last Scudetto.
I don't want to cut you off, but that 7th place was due to off-the-field issues.
Yes.
That was a 2nd place finish.
Correct.
We minus 15 points due to off-the-field financial
I
fair
also
play.
agree with that. So when we look at Juve, it's a little bit unfair to, I think, all the managers that have been there because you are weighed against winning the Scudetto basically and making a super deep Champions League run. And that golden generation is gone. And I think that expectations do need to be changed because I think these finishes aren't as bad as they're making out to be. But I will say, like, things have been getting worse, which is part of this. Something wrong with the ownership, something wrong with the players. That's just one piece that I think is really important here.
Logs, anything you'd like to add before I continue?
No, you say that you don't want to blame the manager, right? I don't even want to blame the players because I think that
players got to take something.
Players
got to take something.
No, but what I'll say to it is that I think that they've been all brought together into a losing scenario. Because to your point, I think it is the management. I think it is the front office. I think it is the player selection. I think it's the deal making. I think it's the contracts, right? Juve have put themselves in bad positions time and time again over the last X amount of seasons due to their window off-season moves that have now put them into financial distress every single year following. And for them to try to piecemeal this roster around what I will say are some very world-class players. Bremer, world-class player who unfortunately has been hurt now for a season and a half. I think that they've made decisions based off of very short performances. Dusan getting the highest paid contract after 6 months at Fiorentina has now shown to be an absolute disaster. Very short window here, but just based off of the last couple of performances, bringing in Openda for $45 million. Who knows what that means? I don't know what they were thinking there. Bringing in Conceição, who I still think is a good player, but for the price tag that you bring him in for, I think is a horrible decision.
The manner in which that deal happened is the scary
right.
thing.
And then on top of that, pushing and pursuing Fortune Koopmeiners, who clearly just haven't been able to put him in a place where he's going to be successful, whether it's his fault. That's one person who could be definitely at fault. But putting him around players that are certainly not going to help his play style that he had at Atalanta, again, the full combination, I think this really has to sit at the front office, which actually makes the problem even worse because that means that the toxicity runs way deeper than what you're just seeing on the pitch. And I think that means that getting out of the hole that Juve have put themselves in is going to take a lot longer than just one window, one successful window.
And
without a doubt. I agree with both you guys.
Sorry, Mats. I know you're going to go off here, but just other players I just want to quickly mention. Fajoli, Hans Nicolucci Caviglia, Moise Keane. Who else do we
Douglas
got there?
Luiz
Dean
is having a good season.
Dean Huijsen, Douglas Luiz.
Douglas Luiz is having a good season in the Premier League. So that was a lot to unpack, and I want to a lot to remember, and I want to talk about a few different points there. Number one, Bose, your point about Juventus cannot go into a season with the expectation to win the Scudetto anymore. As a Juventus fan, I think they always need to go into the season with win the Scudetto. However, I will preference that with there should have been a gap in between 9 years in a row, and then when you lost, because when Maurizio Sarri left and we sacked him, we beat Inter by 1 point. We honestly got lucky that we won that Scudetto in that ninth one. And that was clearly the time when it was like, all right, we are not in this golden generation anymore. We need to figure out how to move next. But the front office, this is where the mistakes started. They said, we can still win the Scudetto this year and then the next year and every year since that they haven't. And what they've done with that thought process is they have shipped off their future for players who are in their prime now that aren't good enough to be wear the Juventus jersey. So what should have happened when Pirlo was there is Juventus's front office should have accepted, hey, Inter caught us. That's okay. We've won it 9 years in a row. Let's use this 2 to 3 year period of not winning to let the kids play, to develop our next golden generation, because we had it and they are all playing elsewhere now. And those were the players that you listed off, Bosin, Moise Kean, Dean Huijsen, Fajoli, Matteo Sule, and the list goes on. And what we did was we spent 30 to 50 million on unproven players or proven players to bring them in to play them not in the position that they played in before, or players that don't fit together or mesh to make a team. Example being Chico Conceição and Coop Miners. Maybe they don't necessarily play together perfectly, or Taram and Coop Miners play in the same position. You can't play them both, right? So that's where they messed up, is they were like, they go in every year thinking that it is a 1 year plan and this is the year we need to win the Scudetto. They don't think down the road. And then that goes to Logan's point, where it's a trickle down effect from the management making terrible moves, terrible contracts. And then no, it doesn't matter who you bring in, because you're financially stuck because you can't buy anybody because you've overpaid for everyone, and you can't sell them because nobody wants them. You negotiate terribly, so you cut your legs out from under you. You give players only a season or a half a season or a season and a half to see if they're a flop or not, or see if they can play well, and you don't give them enough time, or you give them too much time, and it's a trickle down effect. The front office makes bad decisions, right? They negotiate poorly. They bring in the wrong personnel, give undeserving contracts to players. Then it's, once again, I really don't think it's on the manager at all. I want to remove them all, because it's Allegri stunk, Motta stunk, and Tudor was not very good. But Allegri's doing pretty good on Milan right now. We saw Motta have a lot of success with Bologna, and it's like it's Juventus. And then I think a lot of it has to be on the players, because you play for Juventus, you have to understand what it's like playing Juventus. And when you go down a goal, react. There needs to be a reaction. There is no reaction on the pitch. There wasn't last season. That's what I came on every single episode talking about: no reaction, talking about no fight, no Grinka, no Juventini DNA, no Finale Fina, no nothing. There's no reaction. And I'd also go one step further, and maybe this can be on the manager, but there is no style of play. The players look like they've never played together every single game. They look like they do not practice with each other. So the only way that this is going to get fixed from a Juventus standpoint is they need to fix the management. They need to accept we are not going to win the Scudetto for the next 2 or 3 years. They maybe even need to accept we're not going to make the Champions League, because you cannot keep this up of selling young players for pennies, buying players in their prime that do not deserve to be in this club or in this squad, and then trying to fight for the Scudetto that you never, with the guys you brought in, you never actually had a realistic chance.
Juve has broken Mats. Absolutely broken Mats. I think I want to look on just a positive side. I think as we round out this Juve conversation, is that similar to where Juve was last year, Roma was last year, this isn't over, right? We are 8 games into the season. You have a fresh start with a new manager coming in. I know there is an interim coach, which to me was a little concerning as well, just because typically when you do fire a manager, and as we've seen the last couple, at least season or two, there has been a plan in place. There has been a contingency plan. I think there are a couple of names here that we should look at, we should consider. But I do think that there's a way to turn this around. The quality of player on this Juventus team should be able to rebound enough to salvage this season. It definitely doesn't look good for the long term. But Mats, not to say what's going to fix this team, but in your opinion, who comes in here and turns this around similar to what Ranieri was able to do for Roma?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're gonna have that much of a turnaround, if I'm being honest, but
I don't
there
think
are
they
two.
should. I think they would be wrong to try to do that. Even like to Matz's point, like
You have to try.
no, no,
What
but
are we just gonna roll over?
no, but main goal. Like you think about like where Roma was. Like they were
Folks, you
ready.
have been so soft.
They have been ready to compete. They were like going into last season. Roma should have been competing for the Scudetto. So when you fired him, it was like, okay, we have to compete right now. I think with Juve, and it looks like it's going to be one of Spalletti or Palladino. I don't think the goal is to win the Scudetto or yes, the
Top
goal
four.
is to be top 4. But I think how they should be approaching this, no matter what it is, if you have a Palladino or a Spalletti, you're not looking for the result this year. It's the end of next year where you're looking for the result because they are going to need a long time to get this team to be playing how they want. If you go with Spalletti, they're going to be bad for a while. If you go with Palladino, he's going to be a little bit more creative and try a bunch of different things. But I don't think either of those guys are just quick fix, let's get it running right now. And I hope that's how they're thinking. We're bringing in a guy. We're going to keep our young players. We're going to let him develop them. And what happens this year at the end of the day doesn't matter all that much. That's how I would be looking at this.
I think
That's what Roma did last year. That's what I'm saying. Like Roma in 13th wasn't saying let's go win the Scudetto with Ranieri. They came in and said let's salvage the season. I
agree with
they
Lowe's.
need to salvage.
You need to salvage, and salvage is 4th place. You can. This is a roster that can get 4th place. But so now the two names, obviously, they're Spalletti and Palladino. The problem with Spalletti is that he's a proven coach, winning a Scudetto with Napoli, had a 2nd place finish with Roma, and then had a decent stint with Inter, kind of disappointing. But he is a proven coach that's going to want a decent amount of money to sign for Juventus. We are already paying Thiago Motta, and now we're paying Tudor. So that would be a 3rd coach. Affordability, I don't know if Juventus can even afford Spalletti. He obviously, it would be like a prove it deal for him, which I think he'll take, right? He was also a Juventus player. He has relationship with people inside Juventus. But I think also Spalletti would be, I'm requiring at least a 3-year contract. Like Spalletti's not going to do it for a year, and then we'll see where we end up, right? He's going to want guarantees. Palladino, on the other hand, might not need all of those guarantees because less proven, might consider it a dream job. This would be his biggest team he's ever managed, and he'll do it for less money. He'll do it for cheaper because he's less proven. Has also came into a Monza team that was in somewhat of a crisis and was able to steer the ship to a 10th place finish a couple years in a row. We saw him do well at Fiorentina. He has a progressive style of play. So I would prefer Palladino. However, like I mentioned last episode, unproven Motta, he is Motta. I'd even argue Motta's a little bit more proven because he was able to finish in a Champions League spot with Bologna, and Palladino's never done that. But those are the two guys I want. Palladino because I want a long-term project, right? I want a coach for 5, 6, 7 years that we can continue to build around, that we can give him young players that he can develop, that we can stop buying players, overpaying for players, or thinking we need to win the Scudetto now. And I want to give him that time. However, we have to be realistic, and Juventus is always going to be, you need to win every single game, and that pressure is a lot. So we'll have to see if he can take it. But that's who I want to see as manager. If we get Spalletti, I'm going to support Spalletti. I'll hope that we do well. I loved the Napoli team he managed, and the soccer that they played. It was probably the prettiest soccer we've ever seen a Serie A team play in the last maybe 15 years, other than maybe Inzaghi's.
Yeah.
Inzaghi's Inter was up there as well. I don't love how Spalletti's got the Napoli tattoo on his wrist. I was talking about that with Pioli last week.
Yeah, but that's you, Mats. That's your Gumar.
It is my Gumar, but I'm not going to get them tattooed on my. I don't want my manager to have Napoli tattooed on his body. But listen, I like those two names. I'd love to see Palladino, but Juve need to figure it out quick because they need to salvage the season. And I know I said maybe you have to accept don't even finish in the Champions League, but this is not the season to not finish in the Champions League. because we made investments. Yeah, we spent a lot of money. So you need to finish in the Champions League this year. And then next year, figure out what to do. But Juve have a lot to figure out on the front office, president side, all the way down to the player personnel and how they play together.
Quickly, I think we'll talk about whenever they do hire somebody. We'll do like a separate episode on like what that's going to look like. But just very quickly, what I like about going with Palladino here versus Maurizio, or I'm sorry, Spalletti. Yeah, sorry, I had sorry in my mind. Spalletti. Spalletti has a system, and like he's not going to go away from that system. And usually with managers like that, you need to be like ready to be like winning the Scudetto. Like that's what gets you to that level. And I think with Palladino, and especially like the mid-season kind of band-aid job that you're doing right now, he is going to look at this team and be like, okay, I'm going to try this formation. This is what I think is going to work. And we saw this with Fiorentina. That's why I'm saying this. This is what I think it's going to work. If it doesn't work, that's fine. I'm not committed to it. I'm going to try something else again. And that's why I think Palladino would be a very good appointment right now, and I think would help a lot. And I also would think help develop the younger players and kind of get them through this. And then we don't know if he is ever going to be like that top manager, but I think for where they are right now, that's what makes the most sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Juve now have the island of misfit toys that I kept talking about with Fiorentina last year. So I think in short, Palladino makes the most sense, and I think it's a horrible move to look any further than just getting through this season. So I think we're all in agreement there. It's Palladino or nothing.
All right, let's talk about Lazio quick, because this was a big one for them. I don't want to get too much into the weeds on this because this is still a very banged up Lazio team. But really kind of quickly going through the lineup here, big rotations. Right back was Lazzari. Left back was Marusic because Nuno Tavares was out. In the midfield, we had Cataldi, Besic, and Guendouzi. That's because Rovella's out. Who else is out? Dele Bashiru's out. We can kind of keep going. Front line, Zaccagni, Boulaye Dia, and then Gustav Isaksen got a start that we haven't really seen this year. That's because Consiglieri's out and Castellanos is out. This, I want to give for me. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to give Logan his flowers. He called for Maurizio Sarri to play Isaksen, and Isaksen dominated on the right-hand side. He was going to cut in on the left every single time. We knew it. I knew it. The Juventus players knew it, and they could not stop it. He was just absolute dynamism. I think that was the one and only positive takeaway from this Lazio team. I think that this was a disgusting game of soccer. There was no takeaways from Lazio as well. They got the shithouse goal. They were able to defend. Mario Gila, I think, is a very good player. You said that, Bose. Going to probably deserve a move, but I didn't learn anything from Lazio other than that they can be a team more than Juventus, which at this point anybody can, and that Logan calling for Isaksen was right. And I know that sorry, maybe should have went to him a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I think the problem is he plays the same position as Consiglieri, and Consiglieri's been flying this, and he was just out this game.
The only thing that I learned is that Mats is 100% right. To be in Serie A, you got to win games, you got to win them dirty, and if Lazio wins a dirty game against Juve, then I'm all here for it.
Listen, I know Mats is a Lazio hater, but what I will say, a takeaway from this for me, and over the last couple weeks for me on Lazio, Maurizio Sarri is still a very good manager. And this Lazio team, we've talked about this. Last year, they probably overachieved under Baroni, and maybe they shouldn't have moved on. But what he's had to deal with to start this season in terms of injuries is actually insane. And when you go through, like, them getting 3 points against Juve is still insane. Them drawing Atalanta is still insane. Like, he is steering them through this time. And I don't even think Baroni would have been able to steer them through this the way that Sarri is. So it's hard to even judge Lazio until everybody is back, because this isn't their best team. And they weren't able to sign anybody in the summer. So there's nothing to build on from here. I think this is fully like Sarri saying, we need to just get through this and get some of our players back. And I don't think every manager would be able to steer them through this. And I think that just has to be mentioned because it is very important.
Yeah, I would say Maurizio Sarri, fantastic manager. He also came out and said, like, and this is a fan base, your players want to hear this, and this will help rally them. He said, if this was any other club, I would have been gone and resigned, not knowing that they had a transfer ban coming in, but I have too much love for Lazio and Roma, and I want to stick this out and do the best I can. So I agree. We know Sarri's a great manager. He's doing a great job at Lazio. He plays beautiful soccer. So I would keep him no matter how you finish this season. And then once the transfer ban happens, we'll see the real Lazio and who they bring in and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I will say Mario Hilo, you briefly mentioned it. He's going to go for big money in the summer, 100%. He's one of the best
he might
defenders in
not.
the league.
He might
be
not
going
be
in the winter
sold.
window.
He might not be sold because Latito's going to put 80 to 90 million price tag on him that no one will pay. Unless it's like some Prem team or Spanish team that come knocking, then he'll be sold for like 20.
I don't think it would be crazy. But keeping it rolling, we're going to go a little bit long today, guys. Other games that happened at the weekend. Pisa went to Milan. 2-2 game. I don't know how this game was 2-2. I mean, Milan were tale of two halves. Milan were very much in control in the first half, and then Pisa kind of found a way to get it done, and then the refs tried to give it to Milan late, not being serious. But there was a lot of extra time, maybe too much extra time. But goal scorers in this one, Rafael Leao, Atacame got one late. That leveled it, right? To make it 2-2. And then Juan Cuadrado scored a penalty, and Enzo La scored for Pisa. This game happened on Friday, so it's been kind of a little bit of time, and there's been a lot that's happened. But Lokes, what were your takeaways from this one?
Well, I just wanted to say that I'm thankful and gracious that this game was on Friday, because come Friday night, my entire world came crashing down. And then all of a sudden, I was the maybe fourth or fifth biggest storyline on the weekend. So I was incredibly happy that there were some other bigger happenings this weekend, especially in Turin with Juventus falling apart. But with that being said, this was abomination from my perspective, just from a results side. We've now gone 1 point against two newly promoted sides. We are now the Peter Pan of Serie A. We take points from the top of the table and we give points to the bottom of the table. Oh, I'm sorry, Peter Pan, Robin Hood. I'm all mixed up with my Disney characters. In any case, Milan still injuries abound. I wasn't here the last 2 weeks to talk about it, but I cannot stand international break. I know you guys covered that, but Pulisic still out, Stupinian still out, Rabiot, Deshari, Ruben Loftus-Cheek. Tamori was still kind of knocked up. Coney DeVinter got the start here for once. First half was maybe some of the most beautiful, tasty, scrumptious football I've ever seen Milan play in the last 3 seasons. The way that we were passing and moving, the fluidity, we were tearing Pisa apart, tearing them apart. A lot of that, I think, was due to the fact that Pisa their defensive structure could not have been wider. They were the most Swiss cheese formation in the first half that I've ever seen. But to that end, we get 1 goal in the 7th minute off of a great layout finish, who now 2 weeks in a row I guess he's found his spot. He's found his finishing move, cuts in and takes a long shot, 18, 20 yards out, bottom corner. Maybe Pavlovic gets in the way. In any case, a great finish. But then we just start playing with our food. We get the ball. We get great movement into and then everyone thinks that they're Messi and starts dribbling around, gets tricky with it. No conviction, no finishing, nothing. We end the half 1-0. Pisa's able to make a couple of changes. They very much so condensed their defensive structure, which clearly threw us off. And then, unfortunately, 2 opportunities, one off of a very questionable handball. I'm not going to blame DeVinter on that. His hand was down at his side. I'm not sure how that was deemed a handball, but from a very long shot that they get the penalty that Cuadrado finishes. And then terrible defending in the midfield leads to a long ball over the top. Gabbia gets absolutely form tackled. I don't know how that wasn't called back. In any case, very, very poor shot stopping from Mignon. His form is in question again. But what I will say out of all of that is, what's my takeaway from this game is that we cannot panic. Pisa had 2 shots in this game, one from a penalty, one from a crazy breakout. Unfortunate that both of those go in. We can't get a save the entire game. We haven't gotten a save in PKs in 3 years, but we're still third in the table. We're still ahead of schedule, I would say. Allegri, I think, still has this team in a great spot, especially from what we showed in the first half and what we're capable of doing. It's just a matter of, can we replicate that and be consistent in that manner? Now, this consistency, lack of clinicalness in the front third, closing out games, I want to take one moment to be a little critical of our best player at the moment in Rafael Leao. He has now come back and had 3 goals in 2 games, an incredible output in what he should be doing on a regular basis. But those goals have now come from 3 spurts of greatness. Nothing consistent, nothing to build off of. It's just individual greatness, which, Vos, I know that you've noted that that's exactly why Leao fits best in the system, because it only takes 1 spark. It only takes 1 minute of brilliance out of Leao by himself to score these goals, but it's not consistent. And I think that consistency is something that we find in Christian Pulisic, which being overshadowed by the fact that he's injured. And I don't want the fact that Leao has been playing so well to take away from the fact that Pulisic is still such a pivotal part of this team. And the injuries have really taken away from our ability to stay consistent. So my whole mantra for Milan this season has been stay level-headed, one game at a time, because we only have one game a week. We have 2 this week, so we'll see how that goes. But I'm not going to overreact. I'm not going to freak out about this game. I'm very, very level-headed about where we have to go from here. Again, third in the table. Defense is still rather intact. I know we gave up 2 goals to a team that hasn't scored 2 goals the entire season, but I'm okay. I'm not going to take any heat from all the haters. I'm not going to take heat from the hater that is Vos. I think that this Milan team is in good form and that we will be picking up right where we left off before this piece of game in a great matchup against Atalanta tomorrow.
You guys got a tough schedule coming up with Atalanta and Roma. So that will really show kind of what you guys are made of and see how you guys play again. Is it going to be this kind of progressive style that we saw in the first half or more so defensive minded that we've seen throughout this season? That will be interesting for me to see. But I couldn't agree more that you guys are ahead of schedule, 100%. I think that even with the injuries, you guys are still getting good results. And once again, you have the world-class player himself, Luka Modric, who can just win you a game at any point in time with the balls that he can play in. Leao, it's good to see him finding goal-scoring form because we know sometimes he struggles in front of net. So the more he scores, the more dangerous he's going to be. And then as you get healthy, you're just going to continue to build. So I think this Milan team is legit. I think they are a legit contender. And I think that Allegri is going to teach these guys about how to not unplug once you have a lead, because they did unplug for sure. And they thought that the second half, they were dominating the first half, and they were like, hey, reel it in. We got this game on lock, and they unplugged. And Pisa, it goes to show that you need to be locked in for 90 minutes. And Allegri will drill that in. This will be a learning moment for them. There's going to be some growing pains. But Allegri will coach that out. So what I've learned is that every game that I've watched Milan, although like you said, they do drop points to the lower level teams, they are a legit contender this season in my mind.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, Lokes, to your point, the big takeaway here is pretty much nothing, right? They're still very good. I agree with Mott's too. Like, this is a learning moment. What I will say, and me and you spoke about this on Friday after the game on the phone, you were really like upset that when they were dominating possession in the first half, they were moving with fluidity, that they didn't go and get the second, the third, the fourth. That kind of goes back to what me and Mott said at the beginning of the year, and this is what I said on Friday. They don't start the players to make it possible to go flex the muscles. And Allegri is never going to give them that to go flex, because we say this was their best spell of play over the last, 3 or 4 years. And they put up 1 goal in that spell against a newly promoted side that's never been in Serie A before. So I think that just goes to show, even at the best, because of the personnel that Allegri is willing to play, they're not going to score that many goals, even when they're at their best. And I think the learning moment here is when we're playing this good, we still need to be in that defensive shell. And that's Allegri ball. That's what Allegri wants to get across to this team. So I think that is the learning moment. But I think more positives still than negatives from this game, even though they definitely should have had 3 points.
Well, I mean, just a couple of things, reactionary part of this conversation. Number one, I am not used to this. I was fully prepared to come in full armor and a shield to make sure that I was going to defend myself against the onslaught that was going to be the Milan hate. So I appreciate all of your support. But to your point about Allegri, in his presser after the game, he admitted that they just need to be more clinical in that first half, meaning that he was okay with them getting forward, and we should be getting forward.
That's not what I'm saying, though. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that they don't.
But we played the entire first half in their box.
I know, but that's not my point.
Score the goals.
I know, but that's exactly what I'm saying. They don't have enough goal scorers on the field, and they're never going to have a lot of goal scorers on the field. They have 2 goal scorers on the field at any point, and you could maybe say 1. Because Santi Jimenez is maybe not a goal scorer anymore. And that is the issue. I'm not saying that the way that they're playing is actually more progressive than I would have expected from Allegri, going back to Juve too. But still, the core of the team, the setup, the players that they have on the field at any given time, they are not going to score a lot of goals. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they weren't on the ball, they weren't in the box, they weren't around the box. They did all of that, but they created the same XG as Pisa. And I think that's going to be the story all year long. And I would be surprised if it ever gets away from that.
I will say, Paisans, this whole goal scoring argument and this animosity stems from discussions held outside the pod that I'm now going to bring to light. There is a kit online between myself and my fellow hosts here that Milan are going to score 70 goals this season. 7-0. That would be the most since God knows when. They are currently continuing to be on pace since then. They've scored 2 goals every game since that bet has been made, and they need to average 1.89 goals a game from here on out. You heard it here first. 70 goals out of Milan, but we're doing it. We are scoring the goals. We are creating the chances. So it remains to be seen how much of that consistency will go forward, and I think a lot of that sits on the shoulders of can Santi Jimenez finally figure out that he's a 9 and not just a traffic cone. In any case, I will wrap up my Milan take today with a new segment that I like to call Rose Petals and Thorns. My petal for the game, Alexei Salamakers. And Vos, I'll give you your flower, I'll give you your rose because you've been on this man for forever, but this man continues to show his quality as a newly minted wingback. He almost scored an immaculate winner here at the end of this game. Continues to show that he can play at a very high level and can take on any guy that he's against. I still think he has a very big weakness there in the middle, which is why I'm confused as to why he's being considered as a second striker going forward. In any case, that brings me to my thorn, which is his running mate, his backup, Afakame, who is dog shit.
Scored a goal in this
Afakame
game.
is dog shit. That goal came out of nowhere. Thank God he scored that goal because otherwise he would have been riding the pine for the rest of his life. He is atrocious. He can't make a pass. He can't defend. He gets tired. He only plays 5 minutes a game. He gets tired. I do not want to see him on the pitch any longer. He is now in the same bucket that I put Davide Calabria and Emerson Royale in, and I never want to see his face again. So thank you for coming to my segment.
There's no bud in that, just rose and thorn.
The petal was Salamakers and the thorn was Afakame.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm happy your Milan thing's done for the day. A couple other games quickly we got to run through. Bologna at Fiorentina. This one was 2-2. Bologna went up 2-0, courtesy of goals from Santi Castro and Cambiaghi. They then had a third goal called off on an Orsolini offsides. And then 2 PKs, one from Albert Gudmundsson and then a 90+, I forget what it was, post 90 minutes. Moise Keane PK to level it on 2-2 in Florence. Bologna really pissed this game away, I would say. I almost shut this game off after the third goal got called off. And I was watching the replay, so I just searched the result, and it was 2-2, and I was like, how the hell did Bologna not win this game? So that's what I said. And then, Mats, you had a couple stats on Fiorentina here.
Yes, this is Fiorentina's worst start since 1977. Obviously, they have 4 total points, but they have never gone 8 games without a win since 1977. They have not gone 8 games without a win. So very poor from Fiorentina. However, I will say they had a reaction. They showed some heart, we're still in this game, some fight, which I think is important to see because I will say in a lot of the Fiorentina games, they have shown that, in my opinion. They are not rolling over and giving up when they're down. I think they only did that one time, and I believe it was against Como when Como just played them off the park and they just gave up in the second half. But in the Napoli game, they were down 3-1 and they were pushing at the end of the game, almost tying it up. This game, not only did they tie it up, but they honestly should have won on that Dodo missed chance at the end of the game on the open net. So it's something to be said how the players do show a reaction and are playing for 90 straight minutes and not giving up. Juventus can't do that for one.
I don't want to beat a dead horse here. Check in on Pioli. Does this move the needle either way? They got Inter Milan midweek.
We're not checking in. We're checking out. Get him out.
I stand by what I said last week, and that is you ride him out until this Inter game, win or lose or draw. You sack him, and then you bring somebody else in order to give them the tune-up game because they have some easier opponents coming up. Do not give him the new manager for Milan to face with no time to prepare. So no matter win, draw, lose, or tie, I'm sacking Pioli, even though they did react a little bit today, and I just said they reacted all season. I'm still sacking him because it's the worst start ever.
I agree.
Oh my God, yeah, sack him.
What I will say, this is the first time he played 100% of the guys that I would agree with him playing, like and actually playing the right lineup. So, I mean, maybe moving in the right direction. I think they're not going to fire him. I actually think that. I think If it was going to happen, it would have already happened. I don't agree with it. It's just what I think.
I mean, it's just not working. It's
No,
not
it's not.
working, and they have not a lot of time. We're now down to 30 games. People forget we're down to 30 games left in the season, and as of right now, they're on pace. Fiorentina, they're gonna maybe make it to 20 points. Maybe.
I mean, listen,
Potentially.
Once again, though, this is and everybody does it. We do it too. This is the classic overreaction. Yes, there's 30 games.
Oh,
No.
come on.
Let me finish. I agree they're not playing well and they haven't won a game. You take a look at this table and you're 7 points out of 10th. I'm not saying 10th is where they want to finish. They obviously, but you're 8 points out of 12th or 7th, which is where they want to be. So it's salvageable. You got to make the move quickly in order to turn it around. But you have 30 games to make up your 8 points. That is doable.
I'm gonna push back. I agree. It's usually an overreaction. They haven't won yet.
I agree. Yeah, it's bad.
It's bad.
I would say because like Lazio has been bad, Juventus has been bad, Atalanta hasn't been amazing. No one has been like, holy shit, this is their season. Even at the top, like Roma, Napoli, Milan, even Inter go back and forth. Like it hasn't been every team just ripping off wins game in and game out. And because of that, this bad start where it's bad, Fiorentina aren't necessarily out of Conference League or European spot because how long it is in the season and the other teams not winning games.
All right, we'll see how it goes against Inter. That's going to be a scary one. But other games that happened here, Como drew Parma at Parma. Lecce lost to Udinese 3-2. Atalanta and Cremonese tied. Notably in this one, Jamie Vardy scored his first goal in Serie A, and Brescianini had a goal from the bench. I just think it's notable because he hasn't been playing a whole bunch. One thing we quickly have to talk. Can Cremonese finish top half of the table? Like, they're good. They're actually good, I think we have to say.
I love this Cremonese team. I absolutely love it. And I've said it before that every single year a newly promoted team finishes in this range. They're currently 11th. They're right behind. They're tied with Lazio. They're tied with Torino, who I think is going to fall off. I think they've gotten a couple of results that they may or may not have gotten. And they're 1 point behind Udinese and 1 point behind Juve, may I add.
And 1 point behind Atalanta.
And
2 points behind Como. Yes. I mean, the answer is yes.
It's a tight table, Mats. I get it. Tight table. But this Cremonese team is good. They've got good players. It's a Vadi Potty out there, and they're going to make a push for it. I do think they finished top 10.
Yeah,
it's a competitive league.
Yeah, it's very competitive. Other games that happened here. Genoa lost to Torino in Turin. Genoa is now in dead last on the table. Very scary times for Patrick Vieira. Cagliari drew Verona, and they were 2-0 up until the 77th minute. Like, Verona was 2-0 up. Verona was 2-0 up, so I apologize. Verona was 2-0 up. Very bad, scary things going on in Verona still for me. They are still winless. 17th place, not going well there. And then the last game that happened, Roma went to Sassuolo and won that game 1-0 off of a goal from Paulo Dybala. Just want to talk about this game for a couple minutes here before we kind of end things. From a Roma perspective, a couple interesting things that we saw from Gasperini. He played Brian Cristante as like that number 10 role, just under Dybala and Leon Bailey, who we went with the front three. And then brought Ainaoui in to play in the Cristante role, which is kind of in that pivoted two-man midfield. I thought it worked really well. I think Cristante is the third best in that like attacking three we've seen so far this season, behind Sule and Dybala. The other thing I really liked from Gasperini in this game was rotating the players once they had the lead. I think they were very much in control of this game. And he started subbing guys out like 55th minute, like for like changes, getting Dybala off, getting Sule on, giving Dovbyk his chance, although I thought he was bad. So I like what he's doing. I think that's a very good understanding of this is a long season. I'm in multiple competitions, so I like that. Do you guys have anything on Roma?
I'll just say that for as much hate as I've been giving Roma, this was actually the most impressed I have been all season, and I don't think it was that great, but you got to give credit where credit's due. I think the Sassuolo front is incredibly electric and incredibly threatening at all times, and so for them to get a shutout here again, I will say the defense showed up. I don't love that they still have an inability to score more than one goal. I think that the Sassuolo defense is horrid. It's a huge weak spot in this team, and for a team like Roma, who is tied for top of the table, they need to be putting away more goals in a game like this. And so if they're going to be making this push and continue that push, something's got to be done on that front end. And obviously Dopic and Ferguson are playing horribly, which were two bright spots to come into the season for me. And so something's got to click. And if it's Brian Cristante being the best 10 that they got, then so be it.
Once again, the same. Could we come on here and say the same thing for Roma, which is why I think the title of this episode was great. It's the same thing every single week with these teams, in my opinion. Unconvincing 1-0 win, got the job done. Sometimes you need that, and things are going their way this year, which is great. But two guys, in my opinion, that jumped off the screen, were all over the pitch, were electric to watch in this game, were their two new signings. Number one, Wesley. Could have scored a goal. He put one wide, but he was all over the place defensively and offensively. He switched wings, I believe, as well in the second half. So he played on the right and the left. And then El Anawi was all over the pitch as well. I think he covered like 10.7 kilometers or however they measure, whatever they measure in Europe. But he was running up and down the field, winning balls back, second balls, creating opportunities. So I think that we're slowly maybe starting to see the new signings get accustomed to the Roma team. But Roma still have a lot of questions that they need to answer. But they're tied for first place. So they're getting the results, and that's really all that matters. But in my opinion, very unconvincing tied for first.
Still unconvincing. Quickly on the SAS front of things, I just wanted to point out a player that might be one to watch here. Federa played as a left wing, took Loriente's spot. I thought he was exceptional in this game, was really a lot to handle for that Roma back line. And that was in a game where Pinamonti and Berardi both played bad, I thought. So that's just another one of those guys kind of in the lower level teams that's somebody to just take note of, keep watching. Same thing with Kone. I'm going to keep shouting him out. He was exceptional once again. But that's it for match week 8. Match week 9, we got midweek starting tomorrow, the 28th. We got games Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I believe it is. In those games, we got Napoli, Lecce, Milan, Atalanta, Udinese, Juve, Parma, Roma, Verona, Como, Torino, Bologna, Fiorentina, Inter, Cremonese, Genoa, SAS at Cagliari, and then Lazio at Pisa. Some interesting games there. Midweek football is crazy when it's all Italian. It's not even Champions League or anything.
Gotta love some midweek footy.
Yeah, and because there's midweek footy, we had to revisit the Colpi di Luna. Colpi di Luna's coming back again. Our moonshot picks for the week. Last week, Motts did hit his leg. He got us all off the cold streak by hitting. Me and Logs did not hit again. But as there's midweek ball, we thought we'd mix it up and do a Colpi where we went fully outside the box, win some massive picks.
Call it what it is, Vos. Call it what it is.
I'm reading this for the first time. Logs is calling it midweek footy means fat bag Colpi.
Fat bag Colpies for midweek footy,
so
lads.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this in reverse order. Usually I tell you what the Colpi ends up at. We're going to start with the Colpi is plus 12,440. So that should really set us up. I'll lead with my leg because it's the most conservative leg, funny enough. I'm taking Lazio minus 1.5 at Pisa. This is a conservative pick, and this is actually a doable one. The more I'm thinking about this, I could see this happening. Boulier DI is due, but that's my one. That comes in at plus 310 as the safest bet.
Oh, I guess I'm next in terms of safety here. I've got Cremonese money line. They're at Genoa. Genoa, tough game at home, but they are winless and they stink. We got Cremonese at plus 410. Cremonese is a top 10 team in this league. Plus 410 is highway robbery. Get it while it lasts.
And Jamie Vardy, don't let him get hot.
Don't let it get hot at the Vardy party.
Yep, that leads my pick as the highest odds or least likely. I don't know how you would phrase that, but I'm going very specific here. I have seen this team win 1-0 so many times. They, for whatever reason, can't score a second goal. So I'm banking on them not scoring a second goal again and winning 1-0. Following the theme of the episode, we did not learn anything new. It is the same thing with every team. I got AS Roma, correct score, 1-0 versus Parma, plus 500.
That's not spread. That's not money line. That is 1-0 on the dot. Don't screw it up. But like Vo said, plus 12,446. Let me do a little bit of math for you, Paisans. You put $10 on the Colpi, you're getting back $1,245. Paisans, you know the deal. You bet the Colpi, you bet each leg individually. This week, if you do hit an individual leg, you'll pay for your entire Colpi no matter what. because we're going to hit it all. Get involved, get in there, bet the Colby.
Love it, Lokes. But with that, guys, we're done. We're going to try to get an episode out on Friday, I think. We're going to try to do match week 9 review. This was match week 8 we just did, right?
That's
Yes.
correct. We'll be doing match week 9 review, match week 10 preview, and you'll know where to find us, Paisans. Listen, it was great to be back. Thank you guys for holding it down, Mott's and Votes. Paisans, I hope you didn't miss me that much. I knew you did, though. But you know where you can find us at all times. Even when I'm away, even when Mott's away, Votes is away, you know where to find us on all the socials, X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Calcio Culture FC, and of course on all your favorite streaming sites, Spotify and Apple Pods. Comment, like, subscribe, 5 stars, review. We need it all. We love it. Love you, Paisans. Mott's, take us away.
Paisanos, have some fun with midweek Calcio. We love it, and we still have weekend Calcio, so I have some extra fun there. But as always, do not be a gagoots, and Forza Calcio Culture.